Hello students, I hope all of you are doing fine at your homes. In the last video, we had read the second chapter of your book, First Flight. The chapter's name is Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. I hope you must have tried answering the questions which I had told you. But in case you faced some difficulty, this is my video with the answers of all your questions. Dear students, we all know that this chapter is about the installation of first government in South Africa, which was based not on any racial discrimination. The South Africa had completely eradicated the system of apartheid, and Nelson Mandela tells about some of the things which could have been, you can say, ignored. He writes about the freedom fighters who are no more to enjoy that day. He writes about the changed attitude of the high commanders of the army generals. He writes how the black people who were considered to be outlaws a few time back could now achieve their true right, basic human rights. He writes how the black people were oppressed. He writes how in South Africa, if you were born black, you could not serve your twin obligation as a family, obligation as a community man. But when he in his speech, he tells that in South Africa, that system of apartheid would never be practiced again, and the country would achieve its glory more and more. One important thing which he writes is that courage is not the absence of fear. It is our triumph over it. Everybody has his or her own share of fear, but then the real courage is when we are victorious over it. Our triumph over fear is our courage, not the absence of fear. And he also goes on to say that the oppressor and the oppressed both have to be liberated, because a person who is oppressed has to be liberated from the oppressor. But an oppressor, very interestingly, Mandela says that an oppressor has also to be liberated. How? Because he has to be liberated from his own foundations, his own boundary of bias, cruelty, shrewdness, you can say. So an oppressor also has to be liberated. Both need freedom, both the oppressor and the oppressed. The oppressed section needs to be free from the oppressor, and the oppressor needs to be free from his own bias. With this note, let us come to the questions which are given in your textbook. Some questions are given as oral comprehension check. First of all, we would be dealing with them, and then we would be coming to the questions which are given at the end of the text. So, on your page number 18 and 19 of your book, First Flight, these are the questions which have been given. The first question is, where did the ceremonies take place? Can you name any public buildings in India that are made of sandstones? Okay. The ceremonies took place in the sandstone amphitheatre, the Union Building of Pretoria. And in India, We have many such structures built of sandstone. The Taj, the Red Fort, etc. They all are made up of sandstones. Okay. Second question. Can you say how 10th May is an autumn day in South Africa? First of all, South Africa is in South Hemisphere. So May is kind of autumn season for them. But here he also says autumn because autumn is a period of transition. So here he wants to, his intention is to say that this was a period of transition. The period, the throne, that designation, which was till now the seat of white supremacy, was now no longer the seat of any one particular race. The transition was that now anybody could hold that designation, that post, whether he was a black or a white. So this kind of discrimination, racial discrimination, apartheid system had been removed completely from South Africa. This is a kind of transition, and hence it is like autumn day for them. And of course, literally also in South Africa, May is a kind of, since it is in South Hemisphere, May is kind of autumn season. Our next question is, at the beginning of his speech, Mandela mentions an extraordinary human disaster. What does he mean by this? This extraordinary human disaster is the system of apartheid, where the discrimination was based according to the color of the skin. If you are black, then you are devoid of the basic necessities of human beings, basic necessities of a human being. Okay, and the next part of the same question is, what is the glorious human achievement which he speaks at the end? Okay, the glorious human achievement was that now this racial discrimination, the system of racial discrimination, the apartheid system had completely been abolished, completely been eradicated from South Africa. And that was the day of the first installation of first non-racial government, where a black person, Nelson Mandela, was going to be the president. Question number 4 is, what does Mandela thank the international leaders for? Okay. He thanks the international leaders to have come there and to witness the installation of the first non-racial government, because few days back only the black people in South Africa were considered to be outlaws. So if the international leaders had come here to witness the installation and seeing a first black person swearing in as president, that means that the whole international community had accepted this kind of government which was not based on the color of the skin. And this was really a very very important thing, that the international community was also with them, that there should not be any discrimination based on the color of the skin. Now question number 5 of your oral comprehension check says, what ideals does Nelson Mandela set for the future of South Africa? Okay. There is a line in your textbook that he wants to liberate everybody from the foundation, from the foundation of deprivation, poverty and racial discrimination. He wants to have a nation where there is no discrimination based on color, gender or any other thing. I hope this is clear. Now, let's come to the oral comprehension check on page number 21. Question number 1 is, what did the military generals do and how did their attitude change and why? The military generals, they paid a salute to Nelson Mandela. Their attitude had changed because just few days back, they would have arrested Nelson Mandela because he was a black person and black people were considered to be outlaws. But now their attitude had changed because the system of apartheid had been completely eradicated from the soil of South Africa. Second question is, why were two national anthems sung? Two national anthems were sung because one was of the white people and the other was of black people. This thing implied that both the communities had their equal share of rights and responsibilities in a free nation, South Africa, and they both were considered equal in the eyes of the government. Question number 3 is, how does Mandela describe the systems of government in his country in the first decade? First part is the first decade. You see, in the first decade, he says that the white people, they had patched up their differences together and they formed such a structure based on exploitation and oppression on the black people. The second part says, in the final decade of the 20th century. So in the final decade of the 20th century, such structure where the black people were oppressed, that structure was totally overturned, and again there was a system, a society where there was no discrimination based on the color of the skin. Okay, so now question number 4. What does courage mean to Mandela? According to Mandela, courage is not absence of fear, it is triumph over it. When we are victorious, when we rise against our fear, when we go beyond our fear, that is our true courage. Question number 5 is, which does Mandela think is natural? To love or to hate? Of course, to love somebody comes more natural than to hate. Now, last oral comprehension check. Question number 1. What twin obligations does Mandela mention? Twin obligations according to Mandela means two responsibilities. The first obligation is yourself as a family man towards your parents, towards your spouse, towards your children as a family man. And the second obligation is towards your nation, towards the community, towards your people. These are the twin obligations referred by Mandela. Now the second question is, what did being free mean to Mandela as a boy and as a student? And how does he contrast these transitory freedoms with the basic and honorable freedoms? First of all, here you have to understand one thing, that for him, the context of freedom when he was a boy and when he was a student, both the phases, for him these two freedoms, they were transitory. As a boy, freedom for him meant to be able to roam, to be able to roast mealies under the stars, to be able to move on the backs of the bulls, to be able to enjoy a blissful life. This was freedom. As a student, for him, it was like to stay out at nights for study, to choose a career of his own, to be able to earn. But these two things and these two phases of freedom, according to him, were transiting. Because the real freedom was to be an honorable person, to to get an honorable existence in the society, a society where you are not looked inferior in terms of the color of your skin. That is true freedom. When you, whatever color of skin you have, you are not deprived of the rights and responsibilities of a nation. That is the true freedom. That is the honorable thing which you can have as freedom. Okay, this is the true freedom. Next question is, does Mandela think the oppressor is free? Why or why not? Of course, he thinks that the oppressor is not free. He is not free because he also is bound. He also has the foundation of bias, foundation of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and hatred. So he is not free. So now let's come to the questions under the heading thinking about the text. So question number 1 here says, why did such a large number of international leaders attend the inauguration? This is the first part. They attended. It was a kind of acceptance to the newly elected government, which was not based on any color, creed, any kind of discrimination. They had come to express their solidarity, to express their acceptance. The second part says, what did it signify the triumph of? So it signifies the triumph of good over evil. And it also signified a society, a society which is based on tolerance and patience, which has equal respect for the other beings also. Next question is, what does Mandela mean when he says he is simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before him? He wants to say that he is completely in respect. He wants to pay his respect to all the freedom fighters who had been before him and who had been in his times. Some of the freedom fighters were there no more, so he wanted to pay his tribute, his respect to them, and he wants to say that without their sacrifice, this kind of day would not have been possible. So he was simply a sum of all those freedom fighters. Whatever way they had shown to him, he had completely gone into that way. This kind of sacrifice was kind of the inspiration he got from all those freedom fighters, and therefore he names them and he pays them a rich tribute, pays them his respect. Okay, next question is, would you agree that the depths of oppression create heights of character, and how does Mandela illustrate this? Okay. See, Mandela gives examples of so many great heroes like Oliver Tambo, Sisulu, and he also says that this kind of operation has completely transformed his life. He wants to say that operation, of course, builds up heights of your character, because it is under the consistent grinding of this kind of atrocity, this kind of operation, that your true character is visible. Your true character is shown when you are under oppression, whether any kind of oppression. Your true character is shown when you are under any kind of oppression, any kind of exploitation. Okay, and here also we can have examples, so many examples. First of all, look at our freedom struggle. We have so many martyrs like Shahid Bhagat Singh, we have Chandrasekhar Azad, we have Khudiram Bose, who did not bow to the British authority. They chose to suffer. They chose to suffer at the cruelties of the jail authorities of the British people. but they did not accept defeat. So this kind of, even when they were suffering so much, still then they were very happy because they were fighting for their country. These kind of, so many kinds of rebellious songs, Mera Rang De Basanti Chola and Inqilab Zindabad and all these things, they used to sing it while they were suffering all those kinds of cruelties at the hands of these British people. So hats off to them, and these kinds of examples you can find anywhere. Here also, in this context also, you can have the same relation. See, lockdown is going there, we all are staying at homes, but then there are many people, the policemen, the the doctors, the nurses, the health staff, media staff, they are working as real heroes, frontline warriors. And even when there are so many adverse situations, the operations of all the kinds, but still then their true character we see, how they are helping us. So please write it down. Okay, now here question number 4 is how did Mandela's understanding of freedom change with age and experience? Okay, so with age and experience, first of all, as a boy, for him freedom was when he was abiding by the things of his father, when he could roam freely on the backs of the bulls. This was freedom for him. Rolling mealies under the stars, that was freedom for him. When he was a student, choosing career of his own choice, earning livelihood and all, that was his freedom. But then with experience and age, he saw that the freedom of his people was hampered, and that was curtailed. He understood that freedom of his community meant freedom of his own being. So later on he understood that the real freedom was when the whole black community was given its true rights. Okay. Question number 5 is how did Mandela's hunger for freedom change his life? Okay. See here, that line is given where he says that it turned into a fearful person into a bold person. It turned a law-loving attorney to a rebellious person. It turned a family-loving man to a person who is living a life of a monk. And like this, he wants to say how he had to go to prison for his own community. He had to leave his family. He had to leave the comforts of his comfortable life just to ensure that his community gets his full share of freedom. So like this, his life completely changed when he joined the National Congress, and when he started fighting for the apartheid. Then he was sent to jail. At least 24 years he served there. He had to do so many things. He had to sacrifice everything. And then he emerged out as a real freedom struggler, a freedom fighter. So, my dear students, this is all for today. I hope you have understood and clarified your question answers. In case there is any doubt, we shall get back. We shall be in touch, and we'll all have doubt taking classes where you can come up with your doubts. So, goodbye. Take care of yourselves. Okay, bye.